All right, good morning. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Kayla Savage, and I'm the Community Development Division Director for the Kansas Department of Commerce. I'd like to welcome you to our virtual Q&A on the CDBG-CV Grant Fund Program. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple housekeeping rules. Let you know that we have about 240 people who registered today for this virtual Q&A, and that's getting close to the capacity of bandwidth. So if you would all do us a favor and make sure that you are both muted and your video off, please. As folks start joining us late or as they're able, we'll be admitting them to the group. This session is also being recorded today. So once the recording happens, then we will be posting that also on our website. So anyone who wasn't able to join us or didn't get signed up for today, they will have access to this recording. Please remember one more time, make sure you're muted. Keep yourselves muted the entire time and video off. That's going to help us with bandwidth. You will be able to submit questions via the chat, and that is going to be in your status bar toward the center. There's a little message box, if you will. If you just pull that up, that will allow you to send a chat. Everyone on the call or everyone on this session will be able to see the chat, and our CDBG program specialist consultant, Dustin Gale, will be reviewing those as those come in. We have approximately 60 questions that we have combined today from all of the questions that were collected by all of you who submitted. So thank you very much for submitting your questions. We also got some that were emailed to us, and then questions that were also submitted via phone or message to our CDBG program staff. I would like to take it just a second to introduce some of the folks that are here today with us. So as I mentioned, Dustin Gale is our CDBG program consultant. He'll be managing the chat and admitting people as they come in. Again, Kayla Savage, Community Development Program Director. Amy Selm is with our Business Development Division. And Alex Rice, our Marketing Director. She's helping us out. Jenny Erdley, she's also a CDBG program consultant. And Linda Hunsicker is also on the call with us today. She's a field staff CDBG program consultant as well. And one of the stars of the show today, Debbie Beck, our CDBG program manager, which a lot of you people probably know Debbie very well. She's been here a long time. And how we're going to run this today is I'm going to ask the questions that have been submitted, and Debbie will respond and answer those. And if we have time today, we will then try to get to the questions that are submitted via chat. One more time, please make sure you are muted. Please make sure your video is off, and use the chat feature to submit any questions that you might have. And we will, I think we're still working on getting our...
You guys, we're trying to get you where you see us on a full screen. I don't know whether you can or not, but it isn't here. So
that's fine. They can see you.
They can see us. You can see me enough. So
I do want to just quickly give you guys a quick rundown of kind of the current status of why we're here today. Basically, from the timing that these funds, the CDBG-CV funds, were announced, and the time that Kansas Department of Commerce CDBG staff has worked to get our program stood up, and also an online application online, was about 2 weeks. So we know this has been a very harried pace, if you will. We appreciate everyone's patience with us as we work through the parameters, because this is a brand new program for all of us, and appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you today. We will also be sending out a survey after this session today, so you'll have an opportunity to give us some feedback that way too. So Debbie, are we ready to get started?
we're ready.
Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead. So first first question about asking questions at the end of the call. If something comes up one more time, you can use the chat. It should be at the bottom of your menu as a little text message box, and you should be able to see that and send a message, and Dustin will be able to see that.
It does say it's only available to team members, the chat.
If you're part of the chat, we've been having people chat on here already, so I don't know what that issue might be.
Yeah, try sending us a chat. Oh,
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, second question refers to access to the online application, Debbie. They have not received their verification email yet, and then an error is popping up for several of their cities or counties. So they haven't been able to get into the online application piece.
We understand that there's some problems with that, and people have been sending us emails. The issue is if you have a duplicate record in our Salesforce, which is where this is being launched out of, it is being rejected, and it's saying there's duplicate out there. And so I send that to IT. IT is coming in and making sure there's only one record out there. And once there's one record out there, they will send you an email that says, here's what you need to do, and you'll be able to get back in. And it may be that you didn't put the record out there. It could be if you used any of the commerce programs like Peak and some of the other ones, your name may have been put into the system by a commerce staff that you may not be aware of. And when this logs up, it just says we can't do that because you're already there. So that should be addressed.
And they just send an email to you.
Yeah, you just send an email to me at debbie.beck@ks.gov, and I will forward it to our IT, and they are working continually, usually within about 10 minutes or so, getting you logged back up so that you can get into the system.
So again, if you haven't received your login credentials, please email Debbie at debbie.beck@ks.gov, and she will forward it on to the IT team to get you squared away. The next question, can we get a draft of what the public hearing notice and resolution needs to include? Do you have an estimated time frame on when we will have access to the application?
The application is actually accessible right now. You go to our commerce webpage, which is www.kansascommerce.gov/CDBG-CV, and there will be a button in the middle of it that's red that says apply now. That is the actual application. The things I want to tell people about when you're doing that, you can save these as drafts. So you can look at them, just do not submit them at the end. If you don't submit them, then you should be okay with that part. Public hearing notices and resolutions, the resolutions are on the bottom of that webpage. Even though we had them uploaded as part of the app, we have also added it to that webpage so you can download them from there. And the public hearing notices, those you will find in the 2019 General Application Guidelines. That is also at the bottom of that front page. And it will give you instruction on public hearings. The only thing that's different on those is you do not have to wait 15 days prior to application deadline, because there is really no application deadline. All you need to meet is that total 7 days.
All right, thank you. Who can apply for these funds?
Cities and counties are the only ones that are allowed to apply for the funds. That is due to actually the federal program. And what we're having issues with out there are a lot of companies that are trying to file directly through the application, which they cannot do. They need to file through the city or county, through them, because that is the only eligible application. That is actually through federal law of HUD, that we can only go through cities and counties.
And again, these are for cities under 50,000 population.
Yeah, cities under 50,000 and and counties less than 200,000. We only have one county that is totally ineligible, and that is Johnson County. And that's all the cities within Johnson County, as well as Johnson County itself. They get money directly from the CARE Act, so they're not eligible for the state's program.
Thank you. Next question, how do we apply for the CDBG-CV funds?
All of that is at the website that Dustin just put on for you to access in the chat line. It's the kansascommerce.gov website I was just telling you. And you just review the guidelines and you register as a new user account.
Right. So one thing that has caused some confusion, and Debbie, you kind of mentioned this earlier, is that businesses are wanting to maybe apply for these funds, but now they've been advised to actually contact their city or county clerks and work with them directly. And some of the clerks maybe have been surprised by the calls from businesses, and they're maybe not sure what they should be doing with these contacts. What would you recommend they do?
What we've been trying to do is we've been trying to get this companies that are calling us directly to contact the city or the county to tell them of their interest in wanting the city or county to apply, because that is the only way that the application can be submitted. It is still a city or county decision on whether you so choose to, but that was why we were having them contact you, because they were trying to register and fill out the application online, and they cannot.
And again, maybe a further explanation of why businesses can't apply directly to the Kansas Department of Commerce for these particular funds.
I do have the, if anybody's interested in looking it up, it's rather boring to read, but I do have the federal regulation. It's at 24 CFR 480 to 497, which is the federal law that set up the Community Development Block Grant Program. It actually states in there that we can only grant funds to local government entities. We cannot do it to anybody else. Now, you as a local entity can set it up as a, you can do it on behalf of a nonprofit entity, or in the case of businesses, you're really doing it on behalf of private business. Even though when you put the application together, it's not really on behalf of. The only ones that are on behalf of applications are if you're doing it on behalf of a nonprofit like a Meals on Wheels or a food pantry or something like that. The business ones you do not have to list as a subrecipient. We already know that.
And again, then through this process, the decision making then is made at the local level to
Yes.
address what the most urgent needs, most urgent eligible needs are at the community level. Written printable details of information qualifications, where can those be found, such as the LMI information and what would be needed for that for the food banks and the local businesses?
The information is available at the bottom of that webpage that was listed. And what you do is you go down to the 2019 General Application Guidelines, and it shows you how to do a survey for citywide for the meals programs. If you're doing a job program, we will provide job certifications and information after you're actually funded to use to certify for those jobs. What you need to do is when you submit your apps, you need to give kind of an anticipation of how many possible jobs there could be, and you need to list at least 51% of those will be low to moderate income.
Is this funding also open to nonprofits?
Nonprofits, it is open to nonprofits underneath the meal program, and that is one where the meal program will go as an on behalf subrecipient underneath the county or the city, whichever one it is so choosing to apply. So that is how that piece would work underneath the, and the meals programs has to be income qualified by the city or county LMI And as I indicated earlier, nonprofits are not eligible underneath the economic development, and that is a federal requirement. That is not a state choice. And it has something to do with some laws that were changed probably 10 years ago, because typically nonprofits that were loans and stuff did not pay back loans.
Okay.
So they put it to a for-profit business only.
Okay. So economic development grants through this program, for-profit, meal programs, nonprofit. Perfect. Is there any preference or advantage given to an applicant who does not ask for the maximum allotment?
Every application will need to provide justification on why they're asking for the dollar amount within their narratives. So I would not just blanket say 300,000 for businesses if you don't think you have enough companies lined up to be able to offer 300,000. Even though we will take the money back and try to offer it to additional applications that may not have got funded, we want you to reasonably look at, if you're a very small community of 250, don't come in and apply for 20 businesses, because more than likely you don't have 20 businesses that could come in and apply for the funds. So realistically look, and that's what we will look at when we look as part of the narratives.
To provide justification in the narrative.
Yes.
We've got somebody who is new to CDBG applications who asked about just a general step-by-step explanation of the timing, the resolution, public notice. Could you walk us quickly through that?
I am guessing, and this is just a good guess on my part, and most of you that have wrote applications before, it's going to take probably a good 10 days before you can get everything in place to actually apply, because you need to set up what your narratives are going to be. You need to set up your public hearings, which can be held virtually, but you still have to publish them in a local paper, which requires a clear 5 days, what we call as a 7-day. You can't count the day that it's published, and you can't count the day of the hearing. So it takes 5 clear days in between those two to make that a legal notice. So, and that has not been changed where we can come in and make that any less than those 7 days. So that is, so basically the first thing is determine how much you really want or need. The second thing is do the resolution to apply, or you can do that at the public notice at the same time. You can do that either way. You have to put the public notice in there, and there are some people that are asking on the chat, what do you put in the public notice you're applying for? Say you're applying for the CDBG-CV funds. You need to make sure that it says a CV on it so that we know that you're applying for the COVID money. And then the last one is gathering of materials, and then you start working and submit the application online. We have been working with the company that designed the application, and for future, it should not allow you to submit the application unless it's past the publication date.
5 days or business days?
Those are 5 days total. They are not business days. You count them from day one to the next day. So the question that usually comes out on weeklies is sometimes you can pick them up on Tuesday night, but it's not dated till Wednesday. It's the date of the paper, not when they can actually get them. So it has to be the date of the paper. I think, and I don't know whether I have it here or further down the line, if you have submitted your apps already, we have 4 of them that have submitted them as finals. Those applications will be sent back through your email and be reverted back to a draft, which will allow you to come in and make changes and submit that after the actual public hearing notice. No application will be reviewed until all of the data is in and all the dates have expired.
So what is the time frame of the application and award process?
The application process is once you get that submitted into us, and that's open until you get everything completed. Once it's completed, once we've reviewed it and know that it's completed, then it will go through a review process for probably 15 days is what we're trying to anticipate That's our goal, 15 to 20 days. And once after that 15 to 20 days, then we will actually give notice out to your application if it's fundable.
All right, is online publication of the public hearing notice allowed?
No, it must be published in a local paper. It cannot be an online version.
So it could be posted in both places though?
You could post it in both places, but for it to be a legal notice to us, it must be in the paper. And you will need to get an affidavit of publication that you will upload with the application when it comes in. And that question is also being added to the online that says to upload the affidavit.
On the application, where it says add or edit sources, what does that mean?
That is on like the first page or the second page. What they're asking you for when it's add or edit sources, it means, are you adding any additional money from another source to the project? And so it'll say add additional ones, or if you need to edit it, that you ended up getting more money and or less money than what, say an add edit could be, you want to add, this is just pulling off as an example, USDA money. Then you will come in and say USDA money, you'll say who the contact is, and you'll say how much money that is. You can add as many other sources of funding. It's just kind of like the front page. That's where you would put your other sources of funding. Underneath this program, we are not requiring matching funds. So you do not have to put any money in. This is just optional if you so choose to want to put money in.
Should the county apply and then the cities be subrecipients, or should each city apply individually? What do you say to that?
This is up to you as a city or county, whether you want to apply as a county or as a city. To some counties that are very small, you may want to do it as a county app, because then it can go to anybody within that county. In some counties that may have bigger cities, some of those bigger cities may want to do different than the county, and you can have the cities apply, and then you can have the counties apply on behalf of everybody else, but that city that applied that may have got funding.
But either way, that's not going to.
Yeah, either way,
affect
it doesn't affect us at all.
All right. Will small cities be left out if we piggyback onto the county application?
It's pretty much the same thing as before. You'll need to just work it out between you two on which is to your benefit. It doesn't make any difference to us. It's not going to. And what I would recommend, if you're concerned about whether you might be left out if the county applies, I would do some type of interlocal agreement or some type of general agreement between you and the other party on what the eligibility is going to be. Are you going to get so much money? Or are you going to be allowed so many applications? However, your two parties decide how you want to make that work. That is not something that the agency will decide.
Okay. Debbie, how difficult would you say the application process is for small counties with small staffing? And would it be advisable that they have a grant writer or administrator?
We tried to make this application as simple as possible, even though if you're dealing with federal regulations, nothing's ever simple. Because there's some things that are just federally required that we can't do anything about. If you're really struggling and trying to work it, you can contact us and we can help you. We'll offer TA to help you on what it is. But if you're still struggling with it, my recommendation is to get a grant writer or to get a grant administrator. Once you're funded, you will have to have a grant administrator to help you go through the paperwork. So you can do it up front and get it over with, or you can do it on the backside once you're getting funded. We're not requiring it to be done before you get funded. And we have a list out on our regular commerce website, the regular CDBG website, that has, if you go to, I believe it's on the front page, it should say a list of administrators. And that list of administrators is people that have worked in the program and are willing to help you do things either as grant writers or in the case if you want to do it as grant administrators that you can use to procure those. And to procure those, you would go back to the 2019 general application requirements that shows how you procure an administrator.
Great. And again, Debbie, that list of administrators is on our regular.
It's on our regular CDBG webpage.
Can a community retype a resolution word for word, or does it have to be on our standard form? Should they print the resolution and type the information and scan and attach to the application?
You can do whichever format's easier for you. From my understanding, I believe we should have put it out there in a form field for you to use. So you shouldn't have to be able to type it in, but add the information in. As long as your typed version matches the actual language data that ours does, then we should be okay. It's really entirely up to you, but you will have to, either way, whether you use ours or whether you retype it, you will have to upload those documents onto the website. Now, I do have one quick question of our marketing person here real quick so I can make sure that we get you to the right link.
Before we do that, sorry. Just a reminder, we've got turn your screen off.
Steve Kelly.
Steve.
You're sharing your screen, Steve.
Steve Kelly. Alex.
Yes.
If they just type in CDBG, will it go to the regular CDBG or is it still going to the CV site?
kansascommerce.gov/CDBG should go to the main CDBG page.
Well, it had been going to the COVID page.
Request control.
Do request control.
So that's what I want to make sure.
There.
Right, the button.
To the left.
That's where it had been going.
We need control back.
Okay, I was just checking with Alex and we're going to double check this. Where I told you to go back to our regular CDBG page, which is kansascommerce.gov/CDBG. That is our regular page. And that should take you where you can come in and pull some of that data from that you may need in the regular piece of the program. If you add the -CV, that should take you directly to the COVID page. So there are two separate front pages for CDBG, and we'll make sure that if it's not going that way now, that it will be by the time this morning gets over with.
And the resolution will be uploaded on the last page of the online
Yes.
application. Okay. All right. Debbie, can you explain the difference between the micro grants and the economic development grants?
The micro grants are set up as a separate criteria underneath the federal program that deals with 5 or fewer employees. Of at least one of those must be the owner. They qualify differently than those that are between 6 and 50, which is what the economic development is. And what we've been trying to do is separate those out. Some people are going, do we have to apply that way or not apply that way? What it is you can choose either one. And we are probably going to allow within this to change some of the budget stuff once we started getting into the project to know. But if all you're interested in doing is micro grants, then to apply for micro grants. If all you're interested in is business grants and you don't want to do the other, apply that direction. It's kind of on what interest you've had in the program on how you decide to apply.
Okay. Does the application need to list specific businesses that may apply, or is it a general statement about potential numbers of businesses that may be interested?
This is a general statement of interest in the program is all that is required. That will be part of your narratives where you justify how much money you applied for, which will show that.
Could you discuss in a little bit more clarity the 51% LMI of employees aspect for the economic portion of the grant or the economic development grant?
Okay, the 51% on economic development grants is based on the jobs that are being retained by the company, and it's based on the total jobs of the company. So what you would look, we're not looking at new companies, we're looking at existing companies. So say this existing company has 7 employees, you would come back and do job certifications, which, as I said earlier, you will do after you're funded, and you will have them fill that out on their family income, that employee's family income. And of those 7 employees, you have to have at least 51% of those income qualify for that business to qualify.
What all is involved in getting an LMI survey prepared? If we don't have experience applying for CDBG grants, is it best to hire a grant administrator to fill out the online application? So 2-part question there, if you take the LMI piece first.
It depends upon which way you intend on doing it. The LMI survey for the businesses is totally different than the LMI survey for the meals program. The LMI for the businesses is that job certification that you're done at a later stage. The LMI for the meals program is based on city or county population, depending upon which one is the applicant. And what you will need to do is on that front page, you will need to go through and look at whether you income qualify already at over 51%, and it should say 2015 HUD census data or HUD LMI census data. If you go to that, it will give you what your income, what your percentage of LMI is per county and per city. So you're going to know. If that list says you're less than 51%, then you need to survey. And to survey, you go back to the 2019 general requirements, and there is a section on there on how to conduct a survey. And it will tell you how you need to send it out. It will give you the form that you need to use to put income limits in. And then you need to get 51% of your population returning those surveys that income qualify. And it's based on the number of people in a household. So you may not have, and it has nothing to do with the response rate. All it has to do with is meeting the 51% requirement.
So again, the LMI survey requirements are in the 2019 general application guidelines that you can find on kansascommerce.gov/CDBG-CV under the related links.
Yes,
section.
and that is for the city and county-wide ones.
Okay.
For the jobs, you do not need to worry about that until after we actually fund the project. Then we'll give you the information you need for that.
Okay, great. If we're in the process of doing an LMI survey, will that play a factor into applying?
Not really. It depends upon whether you're applying for the economic development, as I've known, or whether you're applying for the meals program. If you're applying for the meals program and you need to use that survey to income qualify, it must be completed by the time that you submit the application to qualify. You can't be still doing it and not knowing whether it qualified or not. It has to meet the 51% when you submit final.
And again, the validation methods for the LMI requirement, the surveys for city or county-wide or for the meal programs, and job certifications come after
That
the
for
funding
businesses.
for businesses.
Yes.
Okay. How many jobs per business have to meet the LMI requirement?
As I indicated to you, the example of the 7, 51% of the total number of jobs that the company has, and that's retention, and that is based on jobs they may currently have that they want to retain or jobs that they want to bring back that they had to let go due to COVID. That total amount of jobs that company has, 51% of that has to income qualify.
Right. Is the low to moderate income status based on 2019 tax returns? Can this be used to keep a business from closing?
The income for businesses is, for the business employee, is based on the last 12 months from the date you ask for the job certification. So it is not necessarily 2019 income taxes. It will be if those people have been off 2 months or whatever, that should be related into those 12 months. So if you don't do a job certification form until June 1, you go 12 months back from June 1, is how that is determined.
If a city or county is approved for funding, can you tell us what we will need to get from the businesses applying?
This is also one of those things that we didn't put in the application in front. Once you're funded for the business side, we will provide some samples of the application to use for the businesses to apply to you. Also, we will give you an example of the job certification form to use. Plus, we will also send you what we call a loan closeout form, even though these are grants. Don't confuse that. It doesn't make any difference. That will give the demographics of the jobs that you put in place. And the one thing about the jobs is once you've done the certification for that retained job, it is done. You do not have to do it again. It is all done and over with.
Okay. Can you address the eligibility of sole proprietors like barbers, hairstylists, and florists?
Sole proprietors are eligible. They can be eligible underneath the, preferably the MG, but it really doesn't make any difference since it's the 5 or fewer employees. The only thing is they're treated the same way as it's a job to us. Even though technically they're not paying an employee salary, it is still a job. And so if they income qualify as that job, then they qualify.
With the 51%.
With the 50, because it doesn't make any difference. It's basically 100% if you have one job.
If our county applies for this funding and some local businesses qualify, how would this affect our current open CDBG community facilities project?
It has no effect on anything that you may have out there right now, except for those of you that have local revolving loan funds. If you were awarded grants in 18, 19, 20, and you have an active community facility, housing, commercial rehab, ED, whatever, it does not affect those because this is actually CARES Act COVID money. And so it's a total different pot of money and no previous one has anything to do with it.
Are businesses with more than 50 employees eligible for any funding assistance?
No, not underneath this COVID. This COVID is basically set up to help that mom and pop operation and some of the small, whether it be restaurant, bars, manufacturing, to stay in. If they have more than 50 employees, they can actually come into our regular economic development program for funding. It's just not grant funding.
If the local government provided small stipends in the beginning of the pandemic to assist, are those businesses now ineligible?
If the community provided the money, it has no effect on the project. The only effect on the project would have been is if you gave that company revolving loan fund money that was ours, then you could give them more money, but they can't use the new money to pay off the loan that you may have given them with the old money. That's the only difference in it. It has no other effect otherwise.
So a little bit more clarification on the LMI. If we have a salon or gym restaurant that employs an employee at a low income wage, but their spouse has a higher paying job, that would not make them ineligible as an LMI employee. That won't help the business owner necessarily trying to retain their lower paid employee if they're knocked out of eligibility by the employee's paycheck. Can you explain one more time the LMI and how that is figured?
The income is based on the previous 12 months of what the employee is. It's not necessarily what the company is paying them, but it's what the employee may have got and their family income for the previous 12 months. I understand this issue, but in some cases, this employee may have been with you only a month before you had to try to figure out how to keep them, or like, so it may have nothing to do with what you're paying them. It is still based on the previous 12 months, and that's how the rulings read on that particular piece of the program.
And that is a federal.
And that is a federal rule. And some cases I understand that it will not be able to help some businesses, but hopefully we should be able to help enough other businesses that can qualify.
All right. If city is not an LMI community, but has businesses in the community that qualify under the LMI guidelines, is the city eligible to apply for the CDBG-CV grant?
It goes back to if you're looking to apply for funds to help businesses, the citywide or countywide LMI makes no difference because you're qualifying those jobs. You're not qualifying it as a city. So a city could be 20% low to moderate income, but they may have 10 companies that each have 51% of their employees income qualified. So it's done by the employee. It's not done by what the city or county is.
All right, another clarification question. Can you clarify working capital that can be included for the business grants?
Working capital is basic to anybody that's done business loans or anything. Working capital it can be inventory, it can be wages, it can be buying products, it can be just about anything that's normal, utilities, everyday expenses. The only thing they cannot do is pay off existing debt with the money.
And in order to get the disbursement, the businesses are going to need to provide invoices to their city or county when they're drawing down funds, correct?
How they will do this and it'll happen the same way on the meals programs as it does on the jobs program, is they will actually submit invoices to you for the product, for what they need. And then you will draw the funds from us and we will send the money back down to you to give to them to be able to pay those bills.
Can we set our own maximum grant amounts to be able to fund more businesses?
You can set yours locally however you want to. You just cannot go above the 30,000 for micro grants or the 50,000 for business grants. In our previous local revolving loan funds that we're doing some of the same type stuff, most of those ran between $10,000 and $12,000 so they can help more businesses. But it is entirely up to you on the local level. You just can't go past the max. We put no minimum on there.
Okay. So that's on the other side. Can business grant funds be less than the 25,000 and 35,000 metric to offer more funding opportunities under the cap?
It's a twofold cap on how that works. And that's for the maximum per job that anybody can get is 25,000 per job that's retained, for a total to the company of $30,000. The cap on the other side on business is you can't give any more than $35,000 per job with a cap of 50. So in the case of you have a micro business and you only have one person that you're keeping, maybe that's the owner and that's the only person that's single proprietor, and you want to do that project, the maximum they can apply for is 25,000. They cannot not apply for the full 30. They have to have at least 2 jobs to be able to apply for the full 30. So that's how those 2 double caps work.
Would locally owned franchise businesses be eligible?
According to us, they are eligible. It is a local decision on whether you want to have them eligible within your program. You can say that you only want those to be local mom and pop operations, or you can say you don't want franchise. You can do that however you want. I caution you in some of that because a lot of the franchise are actually owned locally, even though they are a franchise. They have bought their franchise rights to be able to do locally. So, you're kind of letting them not in just because they have a major brand logo. So, but that is still a local decision.
What if a company requests 25,000 from a city, but then they only supply documentation for a portion of that?
This goes back to they have to give documentation for the amount that they are requesting. So that should not ever be an issue that they are asking for more money than what they're expending. They have to have the income invoices that start after March 1 to be able to draw down the funds. So it's not a cash lump sum money that you're just going to give them. They apply for 10,000, you're going to give them the 10,000. That isn't how it works. They have to provide the invoices for that $10,000. That applies the same way on the meal programs. Whatever food that they're buying for the food pantry or whatever, they need to provide invoices for what they're actually buying to count for the dollars that they're asking for.
So on the budget form on the online application, if the community knows they want to request the $300,000 max for economic development, will the amount between the micro grants and the economic development grant amount be fluid?
The thing on that with that budget is just kind of like I was saying earlier with the jobs. You may say you want to come in and do half and half between micro grants and half between economic development. And when you start getting applications locally, you get more from the local side and from the smaller side and not the larger side. You can come in and amend that budget to move money over into the other category. Because on the business side, we will know that in some cases that will happen. And it's just your choice either way.
Can we disperse this in the form of low interest revolving loans?
No, all of these have to be grants. We are not establishing any additional revolving loan funds out there.
Okay. All right. We're getting down to the last 20 questions for anybody who's counting. All right. Does conflict of interest still apply if a council person or commissioner owns a business that needs business assistance?
Currently, yes, that does apply. They would not be eligible. We have not been issued all the waivers that the federal program is trying to put into place. If that would be waived in between the time that we are looking at applications and fund those, we will let people know that that's a waived. Right now, the conflict of interest is not a waived a waiver that we can deal with.
Right. Can you clarify whether towns with remaining commerce revolving loan funds or micro loan funds must lend out until spent, or do they have 60 days to lend it out? And do those revolving loan funds have to be loans, or can they be grants?
Okay, the instructions in the application guidelines say that you have 90 days from the funding, if we fund your project, to expend your local revolving loan funds that were funded with CDBG dollars to under $10,000. If you don't do that within the 90 days, then you cannot access the new business piece of the grant, and that piece will go away as part of the project. So if you have a business piece and a mill piece, you would still be able to keep the mill piece, but the business piece would go away if you do not do that. We sent out a memo back in March. The secretary actually of the agency sent one out that you could use your funds as grants or loans. That was a local decision on which you can. So yes, you can convert your projects to grants instead of loans. That's your decision. At that time, when we gave the option of being able to do either, I've had all my projects, I probably have 40 revolving loan funds out there, and most of them have done pieces and parts of both. Some have given partial loans and partial grants to the same company. Some of them, just so they don't have to deal with the revolving loan funds anymore, has given 100% grants, and then we've had some that's given 100% loans. So it was entirely up to you. You just need to make sure that you use those. And at that time, we didn't know there was going to be CARE Act funding, and we decided we put CARE Act funding in as total grants because we didn't want any additional local revolving loan funds out there that are not being used. If you're converting existing ones that you've got approvals from me already for, from loans to grants, all you need to do is send me an email to make sure that I know, because within our federal status system, they've already been listed as loans. So if you convert them to grants, you need to at least let me know that that's what you did.
Can funding for a new business be included if they were not allowed to open because of COVID? And if so, how can these funds be used?
All of ours is done by job retention. There is no new job creation. And it's a burden of how you prove that it was COVID that affected the company, because they were never actually in existence to start with. So no, a new brand new business that has not started yet is not eligible for the program.
If there's some confusion about whether a business has received EIDL or PPP, can they also get the CDBG-CV funds? Can we provide some clarification?
Okay, the biggest issue on this particular question is the federal program that we're dealing with underneath HUD. The biggest thing you have to make sure is that it is not a duplicate of benefits that was available through another federal program or other funding sources that could do the same thing. And if it is not federal money, somewhere down the line, I have a question on whether if they received higher money, does that affect it? Higher money was state money. It was not federal allocated money, so it has nothing to do with it. If you got the higher money, you are still eligible for the CDBG COVID money. It's only those that may have got other money. If those companies may need additional funding that was not available through the other funding sources, they could possibly apply for the new funding.
Okay, great. So some questions about meal programs. Can you talk about the acceptable costs associated with meal program reimbursements?
It's the cost of food and the cost of delivery of a meal program, which means the cost of food that we could do, and the delivery could be what things that you may pay for to deliver it, which could be your cooks, your salaries, things like that of what needs to be done by you to be able to get those foods available as a service. So those are the restrictions for it. Is not to pay for buildings to have those. It's not to pay to keep you operational. What it is to pay for to keep you to be able to put that meal for the actual meal.
So can wages for cooks are those eligible costs under the meal programs?
Yes, those are part of the other, to us, that is part of that serving meals to the underserved. So that is an eligible cost underneath the program for meal programs.
Great. So for a county applying for the meal programs, on the application where it says survey or census, would they answer this for the LMI cities that would benefit, and should they list each one? So again, this is a county that has multiple cities.
Okay, if a county is applying on behalf of multiple cities, what you would do is it will be by, depends upon which way I guess you look at it. Because it could be both questions, census and survey, because it could be some of your cities may qualify by census and some of your cities may have had to survey. So you would mark both survey and census, and then at the back where it asks you for the survey methodology and variance, what you need to do is list out who you were using as your benefits and whether it was based on a census data or based on a survey data, and how it adds up to the total number of beneficiaries of the project. And if you struggle with that on how to do it, please send it to us. We can take a look at it and tell you if that will be applicable to what you need to submit.
Great. Are there any penalties if the money's not expended?
No, there is no penalties. It's like the case of, as I said earlier, you will get invoices from the individuals to pay, and if you don't end up having enough companies, then or enough, the meal programs doesn't cost you as much as what you anticipated it may. You don't draw down those funds. We just what we call de-obligate them here on our side. And then if we have enough funds available, we may offer the next one in line that didn't get funding that money that's left over. Because we will use all of the money if at all possible.
Is a DUNS number the same as an EIN?
And I think most of those that are asking for EINs might be a business instead of a city or county. No, they are not the same. What a DUNS number is through Duns and Bradstreet. It's a number that certifies that the city or county is an actual organization. And to be able to get to those, I started to put one way to do it. Actually, when I do it, I just do a Google search and say DUNS number, and it will put you up the DUNS website. The other ways you can do it is go grant.gov, and it will do the same thing. So either one of them is a fairly simple process.
grants with an S.
Yeah, grants.gov. And it gives you a fairly simple process to be able to fill it out. Because when we award funds to anybody that's out there, we will check your DUNS number to make sure that it's actually located to your entity.
And again, just kind of a statement question here. If a restaurant received higher funds, they are still eligible to receive CDBG-CV because higher was state funds and this program is a federal program.
That is correct.
Okay, great. All right. The next question is about PPE being available for nonprofit hospitals, and we're going to let Amy with business development answer this one.
So PPE stands for personal protection equipment, and that is face masks, face shields, gowns. And I believe the question is that available for nonprofit hospitals? There's lots of equipment available. What I strongly recommend you do is to contact your county emergency manager and do any request for any type of equipment or supplies directly through them. They are connected directly with the State Department of Emergency Management and can help you with that. If you find that you're having issues and need some assistance, you can contact me, amy.selm@ks.gov, and I'd be happy to connect you to the right individual.
Great, thank you. It is not, just for clarification, it is not part of the CDBG-CV program. All right, how will this program be administered, and can you explain why a grant administrator is needed?
The grant administrator is actually needed on the fundable side because you think the paperwork up front for the application is complicated. It gets a little bit more complicated on the other side of the process. And like I told you, that list that's out on our website of those that are administrators willing to work in the program, 95% of those have been through a full week training that we have offered back when we had certification programs. And so they can actually help you get to that process of the funding that needs to be done. If you're concerned about who can pay for that, you can take that as part of the grant dollars. We allow up to $15,000 or 10% of whatever you apply for, whichever is bigger, whichever is less. Then we actually pay for you so you don't have to do it.
Is it required?
Yes, it is required.
Grant administrator.
It is not required up front to apply, but it is required once we fund you.
And guidelines for the grant administration procurement. Again, that is on kansascommerce.gov/CDBG-CV under related links within the 2019 general application guidelines. So you can find more information for that there. If the city or county wants to pay for administration outside of the budget separately, is that acceptable? Or does a local amount have to be noted on the resolution?
You need to show it on the budget and on the resolution. I don't care what you pay. That's not our concern on that part. Our concern is that you actually have somebody that's going to do it. Since we do require a grant administrator, we just want to make sure that, I don't care who pays for it, that we actually know that you have one.
And on the application, should the page that asks for the administrator be the CDBG administrator?
If you've hired one ahead of time, it can be the CDBG administrator, or if it's just the grant writer, you can put just the grant writer's name on there. It's just who's actually helping you fill out the application is who that administrator is.
And again, what if a community or county can't distribute all the funds that they're awarded?
As I said, you will draw them down as you have invoices. So if it's not done when we close the project out, we will just deobligate those funds and put it back into the pool of funds for availability by other people.
And
Oh, by the way, we will not increase existing awards. Once you're awarded what you asked for, that's all you will get. It's only in the case of somebody that may not have got funded, will we offer additional money to those we did not get funded.
Okay, I think we all should take a deep breath and pat ourselves on the back. We made it through all 60-ish questions. We appreciate everybody's listening ears and all of the chat questions that we received as well. We do have this scheduled to go until 11:30. So our goal is to go ahead and start answering some of those chat questions that maybe we didn't get clarified during this discussion. Also, just so everyone knows, we are also going to be looking at adding some of these questions to our FAQ document that is also on the website as well. So again, we're working to this to get these answers out to you as the communities. Dustin, do you want to?
Yeah, so some that I found, they're explain the difference between project description, narrative, and community needs in the application.
Okay, community needs mean what is your needs of the community as a whole, and that means to address everything. That could be water, sewer, that could be streets, that could be libraries, that could be anything the city does, parks, the whole works. You need to address what is your needs and what have you been doing. That's just a general thing that we have to have. It doesn't have to be minute detail. It just needs to give us general information. It is limited to only one page. And there is, when you go out there to start filling it out, it will stop at a certain amount and tell you you only have so many words left. So don't go 2 or 3 pages, because all we want is just some basic data. Part of that, you have to address what your housing needs. That is a federal requirement. So as part of that, when I look at what housing needs are, you need to come back and kind of get a little bit of information from census that says, we have so many homes that was built prior to 1950, prior to 1930, or we have 10 new homes built after 1990. It's kind of giving us information about what your community is, what type of vacancy rate you may have as a community. Do you have a lot of dilapidated properties that may need to be done? It kind of gives us ideas of other needs the community might have that further down the road, we may suggest you applying to a different category for those particular types of activities. Now, the other narrative that says CDBG-CV narrative, there is 5 particular questions listed underneath there, and you must address all 5 of those. And what that is basically about the project you're applying for. It is not about the community. It is about what you're going to apply for. Who are you going to serve with Meals on Wheels, if that's what you're applying for? What entities are you going to work with? Is it county owned? Is it other companies, other nonprofits? They have to be nonprofits. Because I did have somebody come in as one of the requests that a local restaurant was willing to do that to be able to keep their employees. You cannot do that because that is a for-profit company that you're paying for that. It can only be done with nonprofits or a county or city government. So that's part of what you address. And then on the business side of it, it can be how many companies have contacted you already that are interested in the program, how many of them you may have seen. I could say the local coffee shop, but since you can't go to the local coffee shop these days, you still talk at the post office or you still talk somewhere on the street, especially in small towns. Actually, you do that in big towns too, but really predominantly in small towns. And you should have a general idea who might be struggling and who might not be struggling, and how many businesses you may look to serve. So that's what that whole sheet is about. That's the difference between the two.
What if a business only has part-time employees?
There is a listing when we send you the information on job certifications. We will send you an also list that indicates what a full-time equivalent job is. And so you can have up to 4 people fill one full-time equivalent job. And the LMI is based on what the full-time equivalency is of all the jobs you have. So you may end up with having 10 people being employed, but you only may have 6.5 FTEs when you go back, and you may have some that are quarter time, some that are half, some that are 3/4, and some that are full. And so we have a scale there for you to use, and it's based on a 40-hour work week.
Family farms eligible?
Family farms are if they're set up as a corporation, as a for-profit entity. It would be like your sole proprietor based, the same type thing as beauty shops.
Only nonprofits are eligible for the food program?
Only nonprofits for cities or counties.
If cities apply as well as county, does the county need to note that in their application?
That's going to be hard because even though you both apply, you both may not get it. I would probably note it that if the city does get it, then you will not put funds into those cities that already get the money if you're looking for the business side of the projects. But then I would, it's kind of hard to say that because you don't know for sure whether they're going to get funding or not. I can tell you more than likely if we know that both of them are funded within the same county, we will come in as part of the conditions when we get contracts together, probably make you state it by letter that says you cannot do anything in that particular community that already got one.
The cities have the ability to administer their grants in-house, or do they have to hire a administrator?
No, the city can administrate theirs in-house. The only thing is we do not pay for the salaries for those people to do that. That is part of a local matching fund.
Going back to the meal programs, what can be paid? Could rent be used, or could the money be used to pay rent? Or is it strictly just for food?
It can't be, if you're offering, you have to offer food and delivery for us to be able to pay rent. We do not just come in and pay rent and we're not paying for the food and stuff to be offered. Okay, it has to have all the pieces together for the rent to be an eligible extent. We're just not coming in to keep them operational by rent, but they're not actually need any of the other thing to make it work.
Debbie, back to your question on using local restaurants. If you had a community center and they have hired a local restaurant to provide the meals, but it's going to be the community center that sends you the invoice for the cost of the meals, would something like that work?
That's a good question. I'd have to check.
I think that might be one option for really small communities that have community centers and maybe not have food programs, but that might be one way to think about it.
Yeah, that might be something that we can look at, but we don't want you to just directly contract and, as a city or county and do it that way. Even though, yes, I understand how it's benefiting that business, but it's set up as a nonprofit benefit, not as a for-profit benefit.
So
Can the county apply for both meal programs and economic development for multiple cities? If so, is that one application or is it separate?
It is one application for all of it, and you just explain within your narrative who's going to benefit from the project. City jobs do not qualify. Cities are not eligible for the money. These have to be a private business for-profit company that gets, we do not retain city employees or county employees. It is all based on private for-profit entities.
Can you do a combination of microgrants and economic development? For application purposes, say if we do 70% as a microgrant and 30% as eco-devo, and we find it is different percentage after receiving, can we adjust that after receiving funds?
Yes, we discussed that earlier in the Q&As. You can adjust it after we have, by the number of applications you get in, and by what you want to do, we can adjust the budget to reflect one way or the other.
Suppose the company employs 40 now, but gets a grant and exceeds 50 in 6 months.
We don't care about that because you're going to do the retention. Well, we do care because we'd like to see that. I can't say it that way. But when it comes to what you have to do with this program, you will actually do your job certifications when you fund the company, and then that's done. From that day forward, if they hire more people, or God forbid that they actually lose people, it is still based on that day you did the job certificate. It's called a snapshot in time on job retention.
For the administration side, if they only receive one, if we receive a single source waiver, or do they need a single source waiver if they only receive one bid?
Yes, if you only receive one bid, you will need to ask us for the waiver.
With respect to working capital that is considered existing debt, can that not be paid off? For instance, mortgage payments, car loan payments?
If it is a normal expense of the company, you can pay whatever that monthly expense is. You just cannot come in and pay off the car so you don't have that expense anymore, or come in and pay off the loan. That's what we call existing debt. Otherwise, it just needs to be, I can pay what that monthly payment may be for, say, 60 days or whatever, but I cannot come back in and pay it off so you don't have that debt.
In terms of income qualifying for the business, do we need earned income, adjusted gross income, or another household income number?
It's typically the adjusted gross income is how income is based.
What's the length of time the company has to guarantee they will retain employees?
It's kind of basically what I just said. From the day that you certify those jobs are in place, that's it. There isn't anything in there that says otherwise.
Already. Was open, answered it written down.
I think there's a new message out there.
Where would a farmer apply? Through city or county? Land is in the county, but farmer lives in the city.
It's wherever the property is located at would be who the applicant is. The same way it could be a senior center. No, I don't want to do it that way. Could be a school district. That was one of the questions that came up, that maybe straddle two particular counties or two particular cities, is wherever that school district is actually, wherever that building is actually located at, that you're serving the meals through, is who we anticipate the application to be from.
The LMI limit for your county is linked to on your website. You base the number off 50% of medium in your county, right?
What it is when you look at those income limits, it is based on, we receive numbers from our federal program every year on what the newest updated income limits are to be used to survey. And what you do is you look at the size of household, and they must fall below the 80%. So there's a 30, a 50, and an 80, and they have to fall below the 80 to income qualify.
Will procurement apply to purchase of food or other inventory?
No.
Can funds be used to pay property tax?
If it's for new property tax, you can, but to those that are paying property taxes right now, that was last year's property taxes, and those are not eligible.
Can a county apply for the meal programs on behalf of other cities if the entire county is not LMI?
You could. It would actually be on behalf of applications for certain entities.
Do businesses have to provide proof of family income for the employees?
I don't quite understand that one, but what you would do is the employees will actually fill out the certification form that says what their family income is. It is not a requirement to have backup documentation from the employee that proves what that is. All you're doing is going by what they are signing the bottom that says, yes, this is correct. Only in the case that we would really question it would we come back in and then actually require them to produce the information, which in all the years I've been here, we haven't done that yet.
Can funds be used to pay past utility bills a company has not paid since the pandemic started?
It can be anything from March 1 on, nothing previous to March 1. So if you got your bill, say March 10th, but that utility was for previous to March 1, you cannot pay for that. It's for costs that's been incurred after the March 1 date.
The FAQ talks about online meetings and bid openings that are streamed need to be closed captioned. Is that also a requirement for the public hearing?
We have never done closed captioned on anything, and no, it does not.
Is property taxes eligible as working capital? I think we've answered that. Our newspaper is delaying providing us affidavits on legals, and they have a furlough week in the middle of this. Can we submit the application, provide the affidavit at a later date?
No. For everybody to be on an equal basis of being a B funded, we have to have all the material.
Since this is the first come, first serve, can you choose to award less to an entity the amount they applied for, all or nothing process?
In the past, we have actually provided less to those, and a lot of it depends upon how close we come down to the end of the money and what we have available. The only reason why we would probably give you less money is if you apply for the full maximum 300,000, but you may only have 5 businesses, or your community may be that 200 employees, and we know 200 people total, and we know you don't have that many businesses in that town. Would we probably struggle giving you the full amount of money?
Will current revolving loan fund program monies be required to be expended to 10,000 before any awarded CDBG-CV can be expended?
Yes. Only on the business side. It has nothing to do with the meal side. It's just you cannot access the business side if you ask for business money until they've expended it on the other side.
Josh, I'll look at the link to see if it's working. If not, we'll get that fixed and make sure it's updated on the website.
One more and then I've got one on.
Josh, actually, if you go to
Resource library.
yeah, go to the resource library. Look on the left-hand side of that web page and go to the resource library. And then there will be a listing of administrators through that. If that link's not working again, Josh, let me know. And I will make sure that the secretary gets it up. Every once in a while, the link will drop and we have to go back in and reload it. And so if it is, it's probably, it may have just dropped in some upgrade they did, and we'll put it back out there.
I've got one more question, Debbie, and then I think we're going to wrap this up since we said we would end at 11:30. Just if a city or county is administering the funds in-house, can they use any of the eligible funds for things like marketing, big checks, promotion, that kind of thing, when the funds are actually awarded? Are they able to use it for
The
that?
county cannot use it for any marketing of the program to apply, or any marketing of the program after you actually get funding. That's not an eligible expense.
Okay. And just to wrap up, thank you so much for everyone joining us today. I think we ended up with, 100 and some odd people. Not quite the 200 we were expecting, but thank you so much for joining us today. Again, we'll be adding some of these questions to our FAQs on our website. Just want to reiterate, you can contact the CDBG staff. Their information is out there on the website. Destin, Jenny, Debbie, and then also Linda. And we also have our statewide regional program managers that are out there on the Commerce Chat feature. If you haven't utilized that before, I want to make note of that. So if you go to kansascommerce.gov on our website, there, at the very bottom right-hand side, there is somebody that you can reach 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Who you can send a chat to and ask more questions if you have questions that way. We have been inundated with the volume, so we appreciate everyone's patience as we wade through this, and we'll get through this together and keep keep sending your questions, but please do utilize that chat as well. Utilize your local program managers, but also let us know with the CDBG staff if we can help.
Now, CDBG staff is also monitoring that chat, so
Yep.
we have a couple of our staff that's helping answer those questions. So you'll get some of those that the RPMs may not know, but will be directly answered by a CDBG staff person.
So they will get you to someone who can give you the answer. Just again, thank you all so much for what you're doing in your communities. We hope that you stay safe and stay well and dry today. Thank you.
Thank you. First, before you exit.
Battery health, maybe.
What a time for the mouse to die.
I know.
Hey Debbie, this is Randy Collett, Marion. Since you all are still sitting in the room,
Well, we can't get our mouse to work to cut us out, so we'll answer it as long as we're here until we can shut ourselves off.
okay, I have just a very quick question. So is there any concern that the communities served by a weekly only newspaper are going to be disadvantaged by the time frames required for posting and waiting time and et cetera?
Actually,
In terms of the first come, first served element here?
well, I've had a lot of people ask that question, and it's hard. We should have not put it as first come, first serve type thing, because that's based on actually having a completed application and having all the information in there. I don't think that's, it's going to be very little advantage or disadvantage to it. I think it's going to weigh out when it's all done and over with.
Okay, because like our paper's already been published this week, so we're already a week behind in terms of actually having it in the newspaper. And then, there's the days after that. So it's just a question and a concern. Thank you.
Well, the thing that you really have to look at is how many of those actually have dailies. Unless it's a big city, they don't have dailies anymore. Everybody's got them weeklies.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have to go into the three bubbles to stop.